So I just watched Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and I really liked it. I thought it was pretty good. I just got out of the theater, literally just now, and raced home to record this. This is very off the cuff. So that being said, this opinion is subject to change, probably in either direction, but as it stands right now, I think it's not quite as good as the first one. I will admit that the first one is, in fact, my favorite film of all time, so there might be a bit of a bias there, but I think while the first one has its issues that I recognize, the ones in this one are slightly more frequent and prevalent, so I would probably give it to the first one. But that's not to say that this one isn't great. There's going to be some very slight spoilers here, but I'm going to try to keep it extremely light and vague because I want this to be a spoiler-free review. The stuff I'm going to give away is very mild. However, if you don't want anything at all spoiled for you, if you want to go in completely blind, I get it. Just click away. This video is not for you. Come back when you've seen it. What I will say is that Sony marketing is typically pretty bad for their movies. They usually give away the store basically in the trailers, but like there's a lot of footage that's been released for this film that I saw beforehand. There's a lot that I didn't see. Like, usually, when I'm reviewing a film that's still in theaters, it's pretty hard to find footage to use in my videos, but I really don't think that's going to be a problem here. I think that they released a lot of stuff and still managed to keep the plot of this movie extremely vague. I went in having no idea what was going to happen, and that was great. That being said, some of the things they did give away did give me pause, I will admit. There were a few bits from the trailers that I wasn't too thrilled by. I mean, there was that big controversy around Jessica Drew because she's pregnant and she's fighting crime and being Spider-Woman, and that was a criticism that I held potentially for this film before going in. I hoped that maybe the movie would address it and make sense of it. I don't really think it did. She does very little fighting in this movie, I'll say that, but she does still fight. She does still engage in combat while fairly far along in her pregnancy, so I take issue with that, I'll just say. The same exact thing with Peter, as a matter of fact, just so that it's clear there's no double standard here. He brings his own child into this place, and I don't really like that. He lies to MJ about it because she recognizes that that's not really a place you want to bring an infant. She's got to be, what, like 5 months old max? Because the film takes place a year and 4 months after the first movie. Miles directly says that at the beginning. I don't like that Peter brought her there. I especially don't like, there's like a scene where he is chasing Miles through this like factory setting. There's gears and shifts all around them. It's a very dangerous environment, and he's just got an infant with him, just strapped to his chest. No regard whatsoever for whether or not, like, there's a scene where he's chasing Miles on a fast-moving train with her still in his chest, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Why is she there with you? So yeah, I'm not happy with Jessica Drew being pregnant and fighting, and I'm not happy with Peter bringing his own baby into this. I think insofar as character damage, Peter definitely took kind of a hit in this movie. The same can almost be said, I want to say, to a lesser extent with Miles and Gwen. There are a few moments where they're in like a combat situation and they're sort of quipping, joking around, not really taking it too seriously, which, you know, is typically something you excuse with Spider-Man because he quips, but like there's a great criticism of the Amazing Spider-Man films, the second one where Peter is just basically goofing off with the Rhino while mass calamity and damage is ensuing across the city blocks, and he's not really seeming to give that much of a shit about all the people that could be getting killed. I think that's a fair criticism in that movie, and I think it applies here to a lesser extent. The scene that they show a lot in the marketing where the Spot is trying to rob this convenience store and Miles is just putting like a Hot Pocket in the microwave and not really seeming to care. Like, there's a guy chasing him around the store with a baseball bat. He could bash his head in for all Miles knows, and Miles doesn't seem all that concerned, and it's a little weird. The same with Gwen in the beginning of the film. She's fighting Vulture, and then she meets Miguel and Jessica and finds out about this spider society, and she's not all that concerned with stopping Vulture. People could have died. I don't think anyone did die. I think they did manage to save the day still, but I take issue with that. And just one last criticism I'd like to get out of the way before I start praising this movie to high heaven. I think the pacing was a bit sluggish at times, and there's a difference between sluggish pacing and slow slow pacing, I feel, because slow pacing can be good. You know, obviously there are plenty of slow burns out there that are great. It's just with these movies, the kind of energy that they're typically trying to get you to feel, you might want to pick up the pace just a little bit. There's just a few moments, a few scenes that maybe extend for a little longer than they should. There's even one moment where something is intentionally just really slow and Miles sort of points it out and Gwen's like, yeah, that's sort of his thing. And it's like, you're lampshading it, because just because you're addressing it and kind of trying to make a joke out of it doesn't necessarily mean that you fixed the problem. By that point, I was already pretty annoyed by it, so that specific lampshade kind of pissed me off. I think the reason that they took their time with this is because this was planned out to be sort of a 2-movie story. This obviously ended on a cliffhanger, and there's still a lot of this story to wrap up in the third film, Beyond the Spider-Verse, and I'm looking forward to it. But I do think that you could, because I mean, the movie's 2 hours and 20 minutes, I want to say, so like you could have cut out around 5 to 10 minutes, and the story would have been exactly the same, just without all the lag, and you could have done the same exact thing. You still could have had everything happen in this movie that needs to happen to set up the next one, and I feel like you just cut out 5 minutes, and you're good, you're golden. But yeah, those are all that I have by way of criticism. I don't want you guys to get me wrong here, because I absolutely adored this movie. I think that Miles has become probably my favorite Spider-Man after this. I already really liked him after the first one, of course. Again, favorite movie of all time. But Peter Parker was always my definitive Spider-Man, and that might change after this movie. I think it just... his character work was so well done in this movie. It's kind of funny that, like, you know, you got your nerdrotics, you got your, you know, the fandom menace who like to make jokes about how Miles Morales isn't Spider-Man. I think it's kind of hilarious how that became a central point of the plot of this movie. Like, it's funny that nerdrotic is basically the villain of this movie, but actually what they ended up doing was really interesting with that concept. Like, again, I'm not going to spoil anything in this movie, but like what they choose to say about Miles's place as Spider-Man and in this Spider-Verse is not what I was expecting at all, and I actually quite enjoyed it. I thought it was very refreshing. That line from the trailer, I'll play it right now.
Everyone keeps telling me how my story is supposed to go. Nah, I'm gonna do my own thing.
Absolutely brilliant in the film, within the context of the film. Great stuff. I cannot wait to see where his story ends. Aside from the beginning, with the slight character damage, I feel, from her fight with Vulture, I think that the stuff they do with Gwen in this movie is great. Her relationship with her father, the police captain who's hunting Spider-Woman. I mean, you've seen it done in other Spider-Man movies, but I really liked it here, and I think this is the best version of that story we've gotten. It was just really sweet. I really liked it. I want to see more with Gwen in her home life. Yeah, Gwen is great in this movie. She is the second best character behind Miles, and it's not even a contest. It's not even fucking close. The visuals in this movie are fucking spectacular. Like, some of the best eye candy that I've ever seen from an animated feature. It knocked it out of the park in every single capacity, and I could not be happier about that, because a lot of the great things about the first one was the art style, the different art styles sort of meshing together. This movie basically took that and just accelerated it tenfold. This movie is beautiful to look at, and I cannot wait to watch it again. Some of the other things that are worth mentioning that I would love to praise is Miles's parents definitely step up in this movie in terms of character. Jefferson already had a pretty good arc in the first film. He was pretty well developed, I would say. He's better here, though. And Miles's mom, she was fine in the first movie. She didn't really stick out to me because she was a side character for the most part, but like here, she ended up being like really, really good. Like, I like her a lot more now. But of course, if we're going to talk about characters, I should also say that Miguel, Spider-Man 2099, I had no idea what to expect, but he's a great villain. He is a great character. The contrast between him and Miles and what they each represent is really interesting. His backstory, super tragic, about what I was expecting. He's sort of dark and broody and very Oscar Isaac, so, you know, good stuff there all around. But speaking of villains, I haven't even really mentioned the Spot. Absolutely amazing. I was not, I didn't know what to expect from the Spot, to be honest. Again, he was sort of an anomaly with the trailers. They showed a lot of him, but gave very little away. But what they ended up doing with him was super cool. They tied him to Miles in a very interesting way that I wasn't expecting, because they sort of set it up like he considers Miles his nemesis, like a rival. And it sort of played off as a joke at first, because you're like, who are you? Do I know you? Does Miles know you? But like, actually, yeah, No, he is. He is his nemesis, and just the connection that the film interwove between them was very interesting, and I'm absolutely looking forward to seeing how that's rounded out. Bit of a spoiler, I guess. He isn't defeated in this movie. They've set him up to be the villain for the next, and I can't wait to see how they do with that. I can't wait to see what happens. This is something you guys need to understand. I have not been this excited for a movie or about a movie in a very long time. There have been movies, of course, that I've liked, like a lot, but like not to this extent. And listen, I never ever expected it to be as good as the first one, so the fact that I don't think it is doesn't really disappoint me, you know? I have heard people say that it's better, and if you believe that, I can understand why. I personally disagree. And again, that's subject to change, maybe. But where it's at right now for me is the first one, 10 out of 10, easy. The second one, I have it around an 8, and I think that's fair. But anyway, that's about all I've got for you guys this time. This, again, was super off the cuff. I typically script these, but I wanted to get my raw thoughts on record before I really digested the film. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you all when I finally get that Flash video done.